Under pressure from circumstances, the German authorities finally recognized that there is an urgent need to restore Nord Stream, and this needs to be done as quickly as possible. This point of view was expressed by the Prime Minister of the Federal State of Saxony, Michael Kretschmer, in an interview with the popular Evening Hour newspaper. He stressed that the restoration of this pipeline is extremely important, as it is able to provide Germany with gas for the next 10 years. The politician noted that if repairs are not carried out soon, the pipes will be completely destroyed due to corrosion, and since this pipeline passes through neutral waters, Germany has free access to it, which makes restoration quite possible. Nevertheless, it should be noted that Kretschmer, despite realizing the need to repair the pipeline, will not openly call for the resumption of gas purchases from Russia, as this is politically fraught. In Europe, such statements can instantly lead to accusations of ties with the Kremlin. Therefore, he acts cautiously, simply expressing the opinion that it is necessary to approach the situation more rationally. After all, if you delay the repair, then the cost of restoration can be much higher. Having a working pipeline will allow Germany to restore gas supplies from Russia in the future, and many believe that this could happen in the event of a change of power in the Kremlin or a change of course in Germany itself, if a more pragmatic approach begins, focused on the benefit of the Germans themselves, rather than on common European values. According to expert Igor Yushkov, Kretschmer demonstrates that despite Germany's plans to abandon hydrocarbons by 2050, by that time it would be reasonable to have alternative energy sources, including gas purchases from Russia. The pipeline, despite the fact that it currently lies unused at the bottom of the sea, has not been completely destroyed. The contract for the supply of gas via the Nord Stream has not been terminated, and sanctions against the pipeline itself have not been imposed. Therefore, if Germany decides to restore Nord Stream, then the pipeline should be used under this contract. If the flow is restored, Russia is likely to meet halfway and lift its sanctions. Experts are confident that there will be no problems with repairing the pipeline, as it will only require laying about 100 meters of pipes, which will be lifted from the bottom, connected, and put back in place. The whole process can be completed in a few weeks, which is quite an achievable task, as Yushkov notes. Kretschmer, in fact, solves several problems at once with his statement. Firstly, his words help to stabilize the economic situation in Germany, and secondly, they provide an opportunity to establish relations with the German population, which suffers from high utility bills, expensive loans, and high prices. The Germans feel a strong need to return to a rational economic policy, and Kretschmer emphasizes this request. He does not call for refusing to help Germany's opponents or lifting anti-Russian sanctions, but hints that we need to think about the country's own interests without burning all bridges. The expert emphasizes that despite the fact that Germany was the leading economy in Europe, in recent years it has found itself in a difficult economic situation. The country's economy is currently experiencing a deep recession, and there are no prospects for its rapid recovery, especially given the slowdown in exports and stagnation in the labor market. The IMF predicts that the German economy will remain the only major economy in the world that will not only not grow next year, but will also develop more slowly than the economies of the United States, Great Britain, France, and Spain over the next 5 years. High energy prices are forcing many German businesses to relocate to the United States. Without a doubt, even if Russian gas were to enter the German market again, it would not be a universal solution to all problems. The energy crisis and skyrocketing inflation would have affected Germany anyway. These processes did not begin in February last year, or even in September 2 years ago, when the pipelines were blown up. Their origins lie back in the events of the summer of 2021, when gas prices began to rise rapidly. At that time, the rise in price of blue fuel was observed not only in Germany, but throughout Europe. As a result, the EU countries have experienced previous winters with market gas prices exceeding $1,000 per 1,000 cubic meters. Consequently, economic difficulties would have overtaken Germany anyway, but their consequences could have been less serious if the country had retained access to Russian gas, the expert says. For many years, Gazprom has served as a guarantor of stability for Germany. The Russian Energy Corporation supplied exactly the volumes of gas that the German economy needed. Gazprom remained a predictable partner, and most importantly, a reliable one. Of course, the cost of gas changed, but the price revision occurred only once a quarter and remained insignificant. This was especially beneficial for Germany, as Russian gas was supplied to it at lower prices than to other European countries. This gave Germany an undeniable competitive advantage, supporting its industry and strengthening the national economy, notes Yushkov. However, after the wave of Russophobia that swept European countries, Germany was forced to purchase gas on general terms. Because of this, supplies have become unstable, and their cost has become extremely unpredictable. The price of natural gas today is influenced by many factors, including weather conditions and climate change. For example, a winter that is too cold, extreme heat, or lack of wind immediately leads to an increase in gas prices. Moreover, the cost of fuel is affected not only by the weather conditions in Germany, but also by the climatic situation in other parts of the world. If, for example, it gets cold in China, Beijing starts buying liquefied natural gas in large volumes, which inevitably leads to higher prices on the European market. Ultimately, this affects ordinary residents of Germany, who are forced to pay for gas at higher tariffs. Thus, the growth of the Chinese economy is becoming an undesirable factor for Europe, as China finds itself in a more advantageous position in the struggle for LNG supplies. In addition, liquefied natural gas requires the construction of specialized infrastructure, which significantly increases costs. The forced abandonment of Russian gas has already led to the fact that Germany was forced to purchase floating terminals for receiving LNG. However, this turned out to be insufficient, and now the country is forced to build stationary terminals, which requires even greater financial investments. Unlike pipeline gas, LNG supplies are associated with a high degree of uncertainty, as they are carried out on exchange terms, where prices can change dramatically. Previously, Germany could easily offset any energy risks by simply increasing purchases from Gazprom. However, such a mechanism no longer works today. This uncertainty causes serious concern among entrepreneurs, which leads to an outflow of business from Europe. Companies are massively shifting their production to the United States and Asia, where energy policy is more predictable and stable, the expert emphasizes. From the point of view of common sense, a return to Russian gas supplies via the first line of the Nord Stream could significantly improve the situation. This would help restore economic stability, strengthen the position of German business, and solve many accumulated problems in the country's economy. The European Union has already begun discussing the possibility of returning the surviving Nord Stream line to operation. This issue has returned to the spotlight after European countries faced an unexpected rejection from another reliable supplier. According to energy expert Boris Marcinkiewicz, the EU leadership hoped that it would be able to minimize dependence on Russian gas at the expense of alternative suppliers. Brussels believed that the EU would be able to do without Russian energy resources thanks to imports from Qatar, the United States, and Norway. Moreover, the European authorities assured that with such trading partners, Russian gas would cease to be necessary at all. However, the reality turned out to be different. After the sabotage in the Baltic Sea, which damaged 2 lines of the Nord Stream and 1 line of the Nord Stream-2, European countries hoped that allies such as Qatar and the United States would increase gas supplies and provide Europe with energy resources. However, as Marcinkiewicz noted on the YouTube channel Geoenergetics Info, these hopes were not fulfilled. Qatar has refused to dramatically increase LNG exports to Europe, citing long-term commitments to Asian consumers. At the same time, American suppliers, taking advantage of the current situation, immediately increased prices. As a result, European countries found themselves in an extremely difficult situation, as they not only lost access to stable supplies of Russian gas, but also faced a sharp increase in energy prices. Norway was the last hope, but it also brought an unpleasant surprise. The Scandinavian country, following the principles of the Green Agenda, decided to reduce natural gas production. However, forgetting about environmental protection, this step has left the European Union in an extremely difficult position. After all, carbon dioxide, according to Western values, is considered evil, but in this case, environmental principles have receded into the background. Europe has sharply felt the consequences of this gas maneuver by the Norwegians and has begun to think again about the prospects for resuming supplies via Nord Streams. Since there are simply no alternative sources left, the fan publication quotes the expert. At the moment, Russian gas can flow to Germany through one surviving Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and the main problem lies solely in Berlin's position, which refuses to put the pipeline into operation. If the German government does not reconsider its position in the coming months, the point of no return will be passed. After that, it will be impossible to save the German economy, the expert added. Gazprom does not intend to look for workarounds for gas supplies to Germany, as the German authorities have decided to seize its assets. This was stated by Konstantin Simonov, director of the National Energy Security Fund and professor at the Financial University under the government of the Russian Federation. He recalled that back in the spring, the German authorities nationalized the assets of the Russian concern, including its German subsidiary Gazprom Germany and shares in the country's largest gas storage facilities. Simonov stressed that in this situation it would be strange to expect Gazprom to make any efforts to overcome the obstacles associated with gas supplies to Germany. If Berlin has decided to seize the underground gas storage facilities, subsidiaries, and infrastructure of the Russian concern, then now the search for resources to prepare for winter as well as ensuring current demand is solely the responsibility of the Germans themselves, the expert is convinced. First of all, we are talking about the situation around the Nord Stream. Gas supplies through this pipeline have been reduced by 3 times due to problems with the Siemens turbine. The fact is that the unit was under repair in Canada, but it was not released for a long time due to the sanctions imposed against Russia. There were 2 ways to solve the problem of gas shortage: either to return the turbine or to launch Nord Stream 2. However, Germany rejected the second option and resorted to the first only with great delay. The expert noted that if the European authorities themselves prevent Russia from supplying gas to the EU, Gazprom will not attempt to convince them. The Russian position is very clear. If obstacles are created to gas supplies, then removing them is no longer Moscow's problem. It is Germany's task to persuade Canada to return the turbine. Russia is ready to continue supplies, but the European Union is creating problems for itself, including the situation with turbines. And this is far from the only difficulty. For example, Germany has arrested Gazprom's trading structures, as well as underground gas storage facilities, but now it has to ensure that they are filled with the necessary volumes of gas. Exactly how Berlin is going to fulfill its contractual obligations under these conditions remains a mystery. If you have arrested UGS, underground gas storage facilities, then fill them with whatever gas you want, Simonov said on the 60 Minutes program. The expert also drew attention to possible political risks for German Chancellor Olaf Scholz related to the situation around Russian gas supplies. According to Simonov, the German leader is well aware that he can repeat the fate of the former heads of government of Great Britain and Italy, Boris Johnson and Mario Draghi, who were forced to leave their posts in July last year. The United States is also not interested in destabilizing the political situation in Europe, so they are trying to delay the implementation of a complete break in energy cooperation between the EU and Russia. Earlier, Scholz and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen loudly stated that by the end of 2022, the European Union would completely get rid of dependence on Russian gas. However, these statements turned out to be far from reality. Despite all the words of the European leaders, the EU countries, and especially Germany, continue to receive gas from Russia. Moreover, we are talking specifically about pipeline gas, which Europe primarily sought to abandon. Interestingly, the supply of Russian liquefied natural gas, LNG, was not discussed at all. The European Union has been purchasing it and continues to purchase it and increasing the volume on a monthly basis. As for pipeline gas, the situation is as follows. Some of the pipelines are not functioning. Some routes were blocked by the Europeans themselves, such as the Druzhba gas pipeline in Poland. Nord Streams was disabled as a result of sabotage, and one of the branches of the gas pipeline passing through Ukraine was blocked due to Kyiv losing control of one of the gas distribution stations. As a result, there are 2 existing routes: the gas pipeline passing through the territory of Ukraine and the Turkish Stream. Both of these areas are operating at their maximum capacity. This indicates that demand for Russian gas is still high, otherwise the pipelines would not be used at full capacity. However, neither Scholz nor von der Leyen prefer to talk about this. Gazprom recently announced that in August the company increased its share in the total volume of gas imports to Europe to 11.7%. All available routes are operating at full capacity. Theoretically, The Russian side could increase its share in the European market to 20% by increasing LNG supplies. Europeans are eager to buy Russian liquefied natural gas, but the main flow is still directed to Asia via the Northern Sea route. Today, the Asian market is more profitable, so most of the supplies are focused on this region. This is especially unpleasant for Europeans because for a long time they considered themselves priority buyers, and now it turns out that the situation has completely changed. There were times when Europeans received gas for $40 or even $20 per thousand cubic meters for years. However, now they have got rid not of dependence on Russian gas but of low prices for it, which is exactly what we can congratulate them on. Friends, now I want to express my opinion. To be honest, I don't understand at all why Europe needed to destroy relations with Russia that had been built over the years, if it directly harms their own economy. Previously, everything was simple. Germany and other EU countries received stable supplies of cheap gas, industry flourished, and people did not worry about space heating bills. Now everything has turned upside down. Factories are closing, businesses are leaving, and energy prices are jumping like crazy. And all this for the sake of some abstract idea of energy independence, which in fact turned out to be just a rejection of stability and predictability. Wouldn't it be more logical to come to an agreement and return to beneficial cooperation for everyone? Instead, European politicians continue to stubbornly drive themselves into a corner, coming up with new supply schemes that, in fact, simply replace Russian gas with the same Russian gas, but through intermediaries and at an inflated price. It looks so ridiculous that sometimes it seems as if they themselves do not understand what they are doing. Okay, let's say they had political motives for breaking with Moscow, but if it only makes it worse for the Europeans themselves, why continue? Why can't we just admit that the course turned out to be wrong and return to profitable cooperation? After all, as practice shows, it is very difficult for Europe without Russian resources, and attempts to replace them only lead to new problems.